Hello and welcome to Positive Fandom. I'm your host, Rrr and today we're joined here with Thecinemike. Hi, how are you today?
Hi, I'm doing well, and it's great to be here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I've gotten to know you as a PGS member through a lot of Zoom calls, and I think sometimes in comments as well. When did you get interested in cinema?
Ooh, that is a long story, but long story short, when I was a kid, I would watch something like Back to the Future or E.T. or even like those 90s family films like Casper. Like I would watch those films when I was a kid, and then I was just wowed by them. And ever since then, I love movies and shows and everything about it.
Excellent. And when did you start to review movies?
Um, like as I watch more films, of course, I get to have a lot of thoughts about them. And then I realized that you can actually do reviews of movies, like you can write about them or make a video about it. So yeah, I would do them on my own personal blogs, and then later on I would discover Letterbox where I would log in all the movies that I watch and write my reviews there. And yeah, I just I love writing reviews and share all my thoughts. And yeah, that's basically it.
Excellent. Now, can you please tell me when you became aware or when you became a member of the PGS?
Well, it started with like right before the pandemic. I discovered the John Campea show, and I would watch it. And then of course Rob is the co-host, and then I would discover his channel, the Burn Network, and then also watch his shows. And I learned that there's this community, the Post Geek Singularity, and I joined, and it's great to be there and have conversations with with the other members on Discord, or in the live stream, in the live chat, and then the bi-weekly Zoom call. And it's fun to be there, meeting different people from around the world.
Yeah, it is fun, and I've attended a few of those calls, and I do enjoy
Yeah,
attending the call and hearing, what all the other PGS members have to say, including yourself. Now, where do you live, the Santa Mike?
I'm from the Philippines.
Mhm. Awesome, awesome, okay. And, I can't always assume that everybody has the same access to movies and TV and stuff like that, but, from listening to some of the films that you like, I've noticed that we have very similar, favorite films, there, and, so of course I reached out to you because I figured, you already do these great reviews on your own channel called The Cinemike, right?
Yeah, I have reviews, although. And then yeah, I have a YouTube channel, the Cinemike, although I stopped I stopped working it because I got busy. And when I got hired, because right now I'm a news writer for epicstream.com, where I would write news about all the latest geek news, like whether it's Marvel or DC or Star Wars or Star Trek or other genre stuff. So I would write news about them. So I got busy there, so I stopped working on my channel and on my personal blog. But I still write reviews on Letterbox. I forgot what my username is there, but you can find me there on Letterbox. So
Okay,
that's
wonderful.
where
I
you
mean,
can.
That's fantastic, and another thing that, I'm gonna look forward to is reading your reviews as well. Um, but I did notice that you had a channel where you review movies, so I immediately thought, "Why don't we review a movie together?" And, I picked Red Notice, mainly because I had no idea what this film was going to be like, and,
Yeah.
the twists and turns were just absolutely wonderful. What were your impressions of overall impressions of the film?
Well, I would say about Red Notice, starring Dwayne Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, and Gal Gadot, and it's directed by Ross and Marshall Turber. I would say that I was entertained by the film, but I do think that there's a lot of plot holes and like I have issues with it, but I was still entertained because at the end it's those three stars starring together, in an action adventure, globe traveling adventure. So it was still fun to watch, but it has a lot of flaws, I would
It
say.
does, and yet it's still entertaining, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it's so entertaining. Like at the end, I have to concede that I have to admit that even though I do have some issues with it, at the end I have to admit that I was entertained by the film. And and it has been reported recently that there's gonna be a sequel. Like Netflix has
Oh.
given an official greenlit on the sequel. I mean, I would watch it. It's on Netflix, so why not?
Yeah, I had no idea there was a sequel. I mean, this film is like
Yeah,
it's a heist, it's a caper, it's a treasure hunt, it's a
yeah,
comedy, there's somewhat of a mystery, it's got action adventure, Interpol is involved. It's got a
yeah,
lot in there. And the chemistry between Dwayne Johnson, Gal Gadot, and Ryan Reynolds, I mean, they have great chemistry on the
yeah.
screen.
Yeah, they really have, and I can't wait to see, because I mean I'm going to mention spoilers now if it's
Yes,
okay.
this is a spoiler
Yeah,
review for anybody who's watching. This is 100% spoiler review.
yeah,
So
and
if you
I'm for
haven't
one,
seen,
so yeah,
I'm going to put
sad.
down a banner that says spoilers. So, they know now that there is actual spoilers in our review. So please go ahead, Cinemike.
So yeah, because the way the film ended is that basically the three of them decided to work together, and and I like that it ended that way because it leaves a potential for a sequel where we will see all three together working together on those heists instead of of a cat and mouse chase around the world. Like, that made me look forward to the sequel just because of how it ended. And to be honest, like, sometimes I wish that the movie itself was about those three working together. But then, since there's gonna be a sequel, that it's been confirmed that it will have a sequel. I guess I'm going to look forward to that, to see how those three would work together instead of chasing.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, yeah,
You know what I found interesting was when I first saw the advertisement for this film, and I had a feeling that there was a comedic element to it, just because of the photograph that I guess the three of them took together, and it looked a little playful. It wasn't sort of like a James Bond kind of serious stance. They were like, and I thought,
yeah,
gee, that's a cute grin. They're kind of grinning. I said, maybe there's a playful element to this.
yeah,
And, I realized that, the, the fun part wasn't just, ironically, Ryan Reynolds plays this jewel thief, right?
yeah,
And he's like a comedian, he almost kind of looks at the bright side of life, and every time he's doing a heist, it starts off where he's in Italy, and it's this playfulness that he'll say these one line jokes to people, um and then it's followed with his that nice scene where he kind of does this parkour on the scaffolding, and it's fun to watch it, as he's pulling out the pegs and the scaffold falls down, but then he'll make these jokes. And then kind of the last thing that I was expecting was for Gal Gadot also to kind of have a little bit of humor in this, and
Yeah.
Dwayne Johnson to be just the stoic person. I mean, what did you think about the comedic dynamic between the three of them?
Yeah, I love their comedic dynamic for sure. I mean, Ryan Reynolds, we know that he can do comedy. That he's a funny guy. With Deadpool and Free Guy and the Hitman's Bodyguard. Like he has shown, in those films that he starred in the past few years, that of course he could do comedic. So it wasn't a huge surprise for me that he can do those comedic moments. But for Gal Gadot, I mean, you're right about that she was very playful in this role. Like you can tell that she had fun being playful here, and I guess, I mean, of course, we've seen her in Wonder Woman. It's Although she had comedic moments, it's not a necessarily like a showcase that, hey, that she can be funny there. But here in Red Notice, like we can really see her comedic side more, like especially like starting with the first scene on the tree together, when Dwayne and Ryan was called in the Russian prison to meet the captain, and then it turns out to be Gal Gadot. Like in that moment, we can already see the comedic dynamic of those three.
We certainly can, and it's actually refreshing because she adds just a little bit of lightness to some of the heaviness that Dwayne has. Ryan can't seem to break his shell, and being able to have her there, she can kind of, and of course this should have been an indicator from the beginning. It felt like she could kind of see through both of them, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and it went on like throughout the film. They're gonna have some banters until the very last scene when they decided to work together. So yeah, it was great, and I can't wait to see more of that in the sequel that they're going to do.
Absolutely. Another scene that I really liked in this film, and of course, as although we may not have stated it, it's about obtaining these three priceless egg
Yeah,
objects that were once owned by Cleopatra, and this is, of course, it's fictitious, but it's still very interesting and exciting to see the items that they're chasing after.
yeah,
And aside from some of the dramatics where the Hartley character pours Coca-Cola over the 3D imaging of the faux egg, so to speak, the
yeah,
the counterfeit one. There are some pretty interesting scenes, for example, where he and Ryan Reynolds, after the scaffolding scene, and he kind of grabs Ryan Reynolds and they go through this window and they're holding on to a ceiling, and the point of view that they did, instead of us watching them from our point of view, we see it from their point of view.
yeah.
And it was almost like you were going on the adventure with them. You were the one who was going through the window and over onto the roof of this museum. And I really liked that point of view. I mean, what did you think about some of the point of views and angles in the film?
Yeah, it's great that we get to see, like example, during that particular moment that you mentioned, we can see that there is some sort of fear because at the end they are not really like professional, I guess. They're not spies. I mean, like,
No,
they're professional in martial arts and in doing those type of things. So it's a spontaneous thing that just happened, that when they were chasing each other, they were caught in that moment, and during that moment they have to think about what they're going to do next, because of course they can't fall or else they'll die, so they have to improvise during that moment. So yeah, it was a great moment where it sets up that these characters are not really, I guess, they're not superheroes, obviously, but they have to, that they are just this normal people, this ordinary people who has to figure out what they need to do. And I guess in some ways it also sets up that, because of course we found out later on that Dwayne Johnson is actually not an FBI, a an FBI agent, what's his field? I think he does behavior profile or something, which we found out later. I guess in at that point it already established that he was just a con man. I guess because of that. So yeah, it's a great moment.
It really is, and at some point, I think, in a lot of the film, Booth is kind of talks quite a lot, and it seems like he tries to talk his way out of a lot of things, but it does actually help him in the long run, being able to sort of parlay a lot. And
Yeah,
we can kind of see that he not only parlays a lot, but he does truly put a lot of thought in, the machinations of how to break into places or what goes on. And through the film we find out that I think it was his father was an archaeologist,
yeah,
searching for lost treasure. And then like it kind of took a different feel. There's almost a point in the film where it felt like it was an Indiana Jones style movie, when
yeah,
they end up in Argentina, and they're kind of looking for these stolen treasures. And I thought, wow, this feels a little different from the way it started,
yeah,
where it felt like sort of just more of a crime caper, or cat
yeah.
burglar kind of thing. And
Especially
now,
on that underground cave car chase scene, like it really felt Indiana Jones during that moment.
yeah, I mean, this, I have to say that it was just incredible seeing a lot of the details in the story. And as you said, they do travel all around the world, and eventually we find out, more or less, that first egg was taken by Bishop, played by Gal Gadot, who is obviously a very good thief, I guess, more or less. And she kind of takes it right from under um the Hartley character. And even though the Hartley character was warned that the alarm had gone off, he went to check and saw the egg. I did question that when I initially saw it, and I said, well, they just told you that someone opened the door, so the egg is probably not there. But he does a visual check. And of course I would question that, because visually he saw the egg in the beginning and doubted that was the real one. So something was up, I think, although I didn't know what was going to happen from that point going on. But were you surprised? I mean, the Hartley character ends up in the same prison that Booth ends up, and they're roommates, they're roomies.
Yeah,
um, and I think that the comedic style in there continues with him, with Hartley doing this sort of psychoanalysis of Booth, um, while they're in the prison, and
yeah,
they're talking about their families, and trying to find commonality or common ground between the two of them. And at some point in the film, Hartley says, well, my father was a crook and I decided to become a police officer. And he says, and you, Booth, your father was a, maybe maybe I'm getting it wrong, was a cop. Or I actually have it reversed, but the point is that they tried to kind of find a common ground between the two of them in regards
yeah,
to why they chose each specific profession. And of course, in the end, to find out that none of it is true. None
yeah.
of it is true for Hartley. But um, what did you think about the idea that, like, for example, the cleverness of trying to create the way of getting out of that prison? And I wondered, I'm like, why are they building this rock wall? Like, what were your thoughts about their escape plan and the execution of it? Because I just loved that bridge scene.
Yeah,
Uh,
I love that moment too, when they were escaping the prison, because first of all, that 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 rock in the wall, those stones, because before that we see them building that, and then it turns out like it's gonna pay off in some way when they escape. Like I love that moment because when they were trying to escape, one of the questions that I had in mind is how they will escape it, given that the prison is above a mountain, and then it turns out there's a helicopter. So I guess there was the convenience factor there. So like honestly, it felt like the way they escape because the circumstance or the things that are there, it felt very convenient. But at the same time, it was fun. It was a fun sequence. I There were some comedic beats in the entire thing on the way they escape, and then I laugh in the moment when where Ryan Reynolds tried to fly the helicopter without Dwayne Johnson, and yeah, and then when the guards fired a missile, it, like like it didn't hit the helicopter because Dwayne Johnson opened the door, and
It was
yeah, it went on the other
incredible.
side. Yeah, it's it's a smart move. I would say that.
But and I didn't really question it because I knew that this was a movie that was like this, where we would
Yeah,
see, perhaps unbelievable feats, and it's all meant
yeah,
just for the entertainment value
yeah,
of this film. And it was absolutely just refreshing to see things like this, where you go, whoa, and
yeah,
maybe you think that's impossible, but it doesn't matter, right? Like, it
yeah,
doesn't matter that it's
yeah,
possible, that it's probably impossible. It doesn't really matter because that was such a cool idea. It's like you could imagine, the person who wrote the screenplay saying, and then the rocket goes right through it, and they're like, "What?
yeah.
Okay, fine, we'll go with it. We'll do it."
Yeah, I agree with that because as much as I thought there were some loopholes and problems, it was fun, and I guess they established early on that it's not gonna be like a Mission Impossible type of movie where where you will feel the logic of every move, and and it's from Rawson Marshall Thurber, who also directed Skyscraper, which a film, from also starring Dwayne Johnson, that I enjoyed, even though there are some stunts there that felt impossible. So yeah, I did not expect the film to be very logical, I guess, in terms of its action. Like I was expecting it to be more of a fun movie to watch, which they definitely delivered on the entertainment value despite
They
all
really
the loopholes.
They
Yeah,
really did. Once we learned that they're gonna use, deep fake technology, I couldn't help but think of, like that Star Wars, deep fake that had taken place last year, and how someone on YouTube went ahead and recreated the deep fake,
yeah,
and, how much deep fake has kind of become so much part of our vernacular now, and I'm like, yeah, that's a modern technology. That's really very progressive and high tech, or would be considered a more modern use of technology, and felt, rather like a good plan.
yeah,
And there were a lot of details when they had to go ahead and steal the second egg from this arms dealer. Boy, there was a lot of details. I mean, it was a high security uh, location with a lot of guards. There was a lot of encryption that they had to somehow find out. I mean, I have to say that Booth is probably a genius. I mean,
yeah,
just even thinking about, all of those details. And the Interpol police, ironically, were also in tow. And I almost suspect that, Booth, and of course now we know Hartley, who were working together, did tip off Interpol that, they would be there. What
yeah.
do you think about the idea of how they kept tipping off people to be at the right place at the right time, but, they were always the ones who left with the spoils?
Yeah, I mean, I I'm a bit conflicted about that, to be honest, because like part of me is asking that really is the Interpol really gonna fall for everything, every all of those things. But I guess in the world that it is set in, I I can accept it. And and I guess that that is the convenience of Dwayne Johnson's character, who pretended to be an FBI agent working with the Interpol. Yeah, you know, s- like I have so many issues in that part, because I'm not sure if the Interpol can really be that incompetent. But then, you know, they established that Gal Gadot is always right ahead of them, for some reason. And then, so I accepted it at the end. So I'll give them that.
Yes, and it certainly is a lot that it seems they're taking a lot of or have a lot of faith in
Yeah,
that character, and I was like, gee, they kind of are trusting her a lot. Um, uh, the other thing I was going to say is that one of the other things that I liked was how Booth had talked about how tight the security was, and that there were no blind spots, and very clearly you can see as he props that door open, he creates an artificial blind spot. And I really liked that. And I could see the sense of this. It's like the door was
yeah,
blocking the camera. And, you can't see beyond that because of the particular angle. And I
yeah,
thought, yeah, that's very clever. I mean, almost
yes,
too clever. I said, this guy is very, very experienced, and he knows how to outsmart certain things. I thought it would be impossible. I thought, there was going to be no way that he could ever even hide himself. And then he just opens up the door, and the door, blocks that point of view, almost the entire point of view where he's working on the keypad. So I really liked that part in
yeah,
particular. And, I said, oh, there certainly are some ways to, get out of this situation.
yeah,
Um, more than once, not Bishop, Hartley kind of says something to Bishop about, this is going to end up in handcuffs, and I almost thought, I said, well, he means arresting her, but it almost implied something else. Like there was this kind of underlying,
yeah,
like innuendo about the handcuffs
yeah.
part, and
And
obviously that was a clue as to what was going to happen at the end. Did you pick up on that, or did you say, "Oh, that doesn't really matter," even though it is kind of, a little cheeky and a little suggestive?
no, I didn't see that as something else. And in retrospect, looking back at it, like he only said it's gonna end up in handcuffs. Like, he didn't specifically say that 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 she will be handcuffed, I guess, in the semantics of the way he said it. Like, he didn't specifically say that she will be handcuffed and arrested. Like, he just said that this will end up in handcuffs. So in retrospect, yeah, it, like, he did not specifically say that she'll be handcuffed and she'll be in prison. So looking back, I guess they have implied a little there about the incoming twist.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And the other thing that I kind of had a question about, and of course, we know that they go to intercept the second egg, at this arms dealer's house, as we've mentioned. What did you think about the fighting scenes between Gal Gadot and Booth and Hartley? Of course, now that we know what was going on, it kind
Yeah,
of makes more sense. But it was very interesting to see her fight not just one of them, but two of them at the same time.
yeah. I I mean I mean, in reality, I I find it hard to believe that that if you're facing Dwayne Johnson, that you can easily defeat him like that. But then I guess they planned beforehand that if ever they're gonna have a fight, like Dwayne Johnson will find the will try to make it like they will lose that fight. Like if I'm assuming that 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 Bishop and Hartley were planning all this before the events of the film. That that if it ever does happen, he will he will find a way that that Bishop will win this fight. I don't know, but if we're talking about the fighting scene, the fighting sequence itself, I thought it was fun. Like it's a great, it's a well choreographed sequence, and you know it's it's fun to see those three actors fighting. And yeah, I enjoyed the sequence.
I enjoyed it as well, and I noticed that they veered away from punches a lot.
Yeah,
There was more weapons play, so to speak,
yeah,
because Gal Gadot picks up, sort of this staff, this spear, and then someone picks up a small shield, and then someone else gets another kind of very heavy weapon that they can't control. And I said that's good because it kind of limited the physical. You're not going to see people punching each other, so to speak. And I was glad that they veered away from that, because then
yeah,
I think perhaps it might have become very unbelievable.
yeah,
But kicking, I think you can kick a lot harder than you can punch. So
yeah,
some of those kicks can be, very harmful and very strong. And if done the right way, you can knock somebody down rather quickly. So um, I liked that they focused more on kicks and on using, sort of like a spear or a staff
yeah,
um, for a lot of the fight sequences.
yeah,
Um, and also, there's the part where the Booth character talks about how, he had this watch story and how important this watch was, and the watch was really sort of the key to
yeah,
completing the circle. And that watch breaks, and it was just really a phenomenal story with the watch. And I think that kind of was nice because it wasn't sort of like he just figured it out and this one makes the most sense, or Occam's razor. No, none of that. It was the fantasy of, wow, look at what I just discovered. There's something special about this watch. And
yeah,
of course, the watch becomes the key to them being able to sort of open a vault of all
yeah,
sorts of, like, looted treasures that are in that vault. And they show a lot of stuff in there, especially the very valuable car, that armored car, along with some other pieces of treasure. And of course, the egg, the final egg, is in there. Were you surprised at who ended up with all three of the eggs? Were you surprised at the client who wanted those three eggs?
um not really, because like I expected that once those two guys discovered the third act, Gal Gadot will be there, and it turns out that she was following them. So so I expected that scenario, that it will happen, but you know, I guess because those eggs are basically the MacGuffin of the entire story. And and it felt like, looking back, knowing all the plot twists, like the objective of Gal and Dwayne, of their characters, is to get those three eggs because their plan i- is to sell it on that uh, on that a billionaire at the end, whose daughter got married, in that sequence in Egypt. So yeah, it it wasn't surprising to me about how it all ended up.
I absolutely love that Ed
Yeah,
Sheeran
yeah,
was in
yeah,
it.
and Sheeran, yeah, he was there. I almost forgot about that, and yeah, it it was it was a funny cameo, like he was singing perfect. I believe he was singing perfect, and then when the Interpol came, and then they tried to handcuff the bride, like, and Sheeran tries to, yeah, it, it was funny cameo. It,
And she, it was funny. It's like, here are these priceless eggs, right? Here are these
yeah,
three, all three of them. And then it's like, it's Ed Sheeran, like, I
yeah,
think I would probably be the same way. It's Ed Sheeran, like you would just be so,
yeah,
so it was the
and I
coolest thing
like,
ever to have,
yeah, and I laughed when he said, like, I was on Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is,
And
a very specific reference, for people who knew that he cameoed in an episode of Game of Thrones. Yeah,
uh, of course, as we had mentioned before, we find out, and of course, Booth, and I guess for some people it would not have been a surprise, but for me, it was a total surprise that Hartley and Bishop were working together, and Booth was shocked, of course, and as you said, they agreed to kind of work together. um I think it's very interesting too that they use the dynamic of Booth kind of being maybe a little vulnerable because he is solo and working
yeah,
alone,
yeah,
and they knew that they could kind of manipulate him because he's a jokester, and
yeah,
he kind of revealed a little bit of vulnerability about
yeah,
himself,
and
whereas
yes,
the other two characters didn't.
yeah, and yeah, and during that reveal, you can feel that he really felt betrayed by it, because of course he was with Dwayne Johnson all along, and he was a bit naive about it. So I can actually feel in Ryan Reynolds' performance during that moment that he really felt betrayed by them, and yeah, and, and then they handcuff him in after that moment, leaving him there in the jungle, which is sad. Although later on he was able to get revenge on them. 6 months later, I I believe, in the end. So yeah,
Oh yeah, I mean, if anybody could get out of the handcuffs, it's him, and they knew he could get
yeah,
out. So, they were expecting for him to, for a shock or a surprise from him, because they didn't want to hurt him. This is also another interesting twist about this is the fact
yeah,
that, they left him in handcuffs, and that's like tying his hands up in a nice neat bow with a ribbon. Um, he
yeah,
he shouldn't
yeah,
have a problem getting out of handcuffs, right?
yeah, and it's just business for them, nothing personal. So yeah, I agree with that.
And so for me, overall, I have to say that the chemistry of the actors was fantastic. I think it was directed nicely. The stunts were entertaining and fun to watch. As I said, my favorite was the scaffolding and when Dwayne Johnson had to jump off of that bridge part and the helicopter. I enjoyed that so much. Um, and also, Gal Gadot is wonderful to watch, in this caper. I thought she was fun, and it was kind of carefree. She was fashionable. She had these great, for me, this is important. Maybe not for a lot of people, but I do like seeing, beautiful women in beautiful clothes. So it kind of had that James Bond feel, the Monte Carlo
Yeah.
feel, but it was not, none of it was supposed to be taken too seriously,
Yeah.
because of the comedic parts between them. And even the woman from Interpol wore a beautiful, this is, and I'm sorry guys, but I noticed the fashion. Even she wore a beautiful gold gown that I was like, wow, this looks incredible. Like I really want that gown. So visually, I think this film was kind of stunning,
Yeah.
in the way everything came, you know, to play. And you got to see different museums and different international locations. You got to go to Bali, you got to go to London, you got to go to, Italy,
Yeah.
Russia, even. Gee, this movie really, took you around the world.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting. I'm happy. I think that I would have liked to have seen this film. I saw it at home, obviously, but I would have liked to have seen it in a theater. If someone
Yeah.
had taken me to see this film, I probably would have just come out of the theater smiling at, just all the fun bits of it. Even the part where we both said that there was a certain part where it felt like it was almost like Indiana Jones finding this bunker, underneath this Brazilian jungle or Argentinian jungle. Or I think it was Argentinian jungle. And being able to kind of go into the bunker was fun. It turned out to start to become very fun rather than competitive. There's almost a point where it didn't feel like it was competitive anymore, and that's fine because the interaction between even the Interpol police officer, there was chemistry with everybody. So the casting just was remarkable. Now you said that they're coming out with the second part. I am so happy to hear that, and I hope that it's on the same level of fun. And however you want to describe this film, as I said, for
Yeah.
me, I tried to put it in one way, and I said it's like a heist, a caper, a treasure hunt, a comedy, a mystery, action, adventure, romance, even now,
Yeah.
at some point. I would say if I had to rank this film, and we're not saying that this film is a contender, for your consideration. We're certainly not saying that about this film at all.
Yeah.
But entertainment value, I got to give it a 9 out of a 10, for me, just on entertainment, pure entertainment value alone. How would you rank the film, The Cinemike?
If I would give it a score, you know what? Despite all the problems of all the issues that I have, all the loopholes, because there were some just moments where I was struggling, obviously, to express, because you know there were some moments where I was like, really, the Interpol will be this incompetent. I was a bit, taken aback by that. But in the end, it was fun. It was beautifully made. And it's obvious that Netflix gave them a lot of money to make this film. And the three leads were great together, and it was fun, it was entertaining. So I would give it probably a 7 out of 10, because at the end, even with all the problems that I have, I was still entertained. I have to admit and concede that I was entertained by the film, and I had a great time watching it on Netflix at home. And I'm not sure if I would watch it again for multiple times. Maybe not. Maybe I'll just wait for the sequel. And I've heard that the sequel, according to the reports, of course, those three stars will be back, and the director will be back. I heard that they are planning it to be more of an ensemble film, like
Oh,
Ocean's 11, like an ensemble heist film for for the sequel. So I'm looking forward to see those three characters now working together. Now that we know that they are professional art thief, all of them. So I'm looking forward on that dynamic, which is why I am looking forward to the sequel at the very least.
Yeah, I had no idea that they were thinking of doing an Ocean's 11 style film. So this should
Yeah,
be interesting going
yeah,
forward. And
and and I am looking forward to see who they will cast in on those other roles, because I mean, of course, Dwayne, Ryan, and Gal are already three big stars. So I'm going to assume that are going to cast some A-list actors as well on the sequels. So I'm looking forward to see how it all goes.
I'm looking
And
forward
yeah,
to it
so
as well. And this must have been a very fun film for them to make.
yeah,
You can tell that they enjoyed making this film. And so, I think anybody who is watching this, go ahead and watch Red Notice. Break
yeah,
out some popcorn and whatever treats you like to have during a film. This
just
is
on
pure.
Netflix. So yeah, you can
That's
watch it
right.
anytime.
You can watch it anytime. It's pure entertainment. So, like I said, it's not for your consideration for awards or anything like that. This is pure entertainment. You will be entertained. It's going to be fun. And, just go ahead and watch this film and enjoy it. Um, Thecinemike, where can people find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at the Cinemike, and you can read my articles on epicstream.com. So yeah, there's that.
Excellent. And of course, you all can find me here on Positive Fandom on my YouTube channel. You can also find me on Positive Fandom on Twitch. It's one word. On Monday nights, you can find me on Toxic Femininity with Lorraine Creole at 8 p.m. Eastern. On Thursday nights, you can find me on Uncivilized Scoundrels on the 1/6 Scale Man Network. On Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern, you can find me on Midnight's Edge in the morning with Tom and Andre. Friday nights, you can find me on the Burn Network with Robert Meyer Burnett. And on Sundays, you can find me on my Sunday Brunch, which is a live show at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much for joining us in this review of Red Notice, a fantastic film. It's a family-friendly film, a lot of fun, a lot of adventure, and go ahead and watch it and enjoy it. Enjoy it. For those of you out there, please come back to the channel. We're going to have more reviews like this. And thank you so much for taking the time out to watch it. And remember, everybody, as you are out there navigating the world, always remember to please be kind.